My name is Renata Poliukaitite. I am the member of Digitax at ICS2 team, and today we'll go through a set of slides explaining the release 2 of ICS2, also some questions that we have received in advance of this webinar. The webinar will be recorded. We will publish the slides and the recording on the PIX platform, and so those trade associations that have access will be able to obtain this material, and then we will kindly ask you to share it with your members. We will not publish this information on a publicly available BC group. So we will ask then the associations to distribute this information to the members. If you would like to raise a question during the presentation, please type in the chat that either your question or just indicate that you would like to have the floor to ask your question yourself, and you will be granted that. I will not be able to follow the raised hand, so please do not use the raise hand functionality. Although today's session was scheduled longer, it will last only 1 hour. Unfortunately, I have another commitment which I cannot change, so we will try to fit into 1 hour. However, the webinars will be regular events, so a monthly event, and the next one is scheduled for the 20th of July. You will receive the invitation shortly. And as usual, we will ask you to send your questions in advance so that we can prepare the replies for the webinar. And if you would like to have a specific topic to be covered in more details, also please send this request to us so that we can prepare and to have a more detailed overview and then discussion. In release 2, since we will have a lot of economic operators joining ICS2, we will not be able to grant access to PIX for all of them. So here we really rely a lot on the associations to be the multiplicator and to really spread information from the PIX platform to their members. So let's start with the presentation. The questions that we have received from the European Express Association were incorporated into the presentation, so I hope that the presentation will cover all of those. ICS2 release 2, so this is Advanced Cargo Information System introduced by the European Union. Supporting, so the tool is supporting the new legal requirements for the entry summary declaration filing and all the entry process, the formalities for the goods entering or transiting via the EU. And all the consignments, so postal, express, and cargo, air cargo general, transported to the EU or via the EU by air will be subject to the requirements of the ENS filing. And that ENS or those ENSs will be used for 2 types of the risk analysis. So air preloading risk analysis, which is focused on aviation security only, and the pre-arrival risk analysis, which is covering all security and safety related risks. And the entire entry process is built around these 2 phases of the risk analysis. Let's go to the next slide. Some of you already have seen this overview of the different phases. This is an example of the different actors, for example, involved in air cargo general, and all the steps, a very high level overview of the steps in the 2 phases for the entry of the goods, where ENS filings are lodged for air preloading risk analysis, for air pre-arrival, full security and safety risk analysis, arrival notification lodged by the carrier, presentation, and then presentation notification, which is followed by the controls by customs. So if we look into the ENS data requirements for the different business actors involved in the ICS2 Release 2, for the postal consignments to the already existing Release 1 filings F43 and F44, which are lodged by the postal operator in the preloading phase, and those two filings, they serve both preloading and pre-arrival risk analysis. We're now adding the F42, so the carrier filing, which is lodged in the pre-arrival phase, and it is used for the pre-arrival risk analysis only. We have some visual representation of the different actors and their different filing types. So this greenish box on the left represents the pre-loading phase, and the bluish box on the right represents the pre-arrival phase, and you see which actor has to file which type of the filing. Moving next to the express business model. We already have the F32 filing lodged by express operators in the preloading phase, in which is used exclusively for preloading risk analysis. A new type of filing F30 will be added, again to be lodged by the express operators for the pre-arrival phase, and it will be used for the pre-arrival risk analysis. Two new types of filings have been introduced for express consignments on air cargo general. So F33, it's a partial data set lodged by the express operator for express consignments on air cargo general, and this is used for the pre-arrival phase and for the pre-arrival risk analysis. That filing has to be combined with the carrier filing. We will see that a bit later. And then there is another F31, which is a full ENS data set, which can be used by the carrier to lodge the ENS for the express consignments on air cargo general in the pre-arrival phase. Or it can be used for by express integrator as well, if there is an agreement with the carrier that the express operator will file this filing. And here you see different possible combinations of the ENS filings for the express. So the one F32 lodged in preloading and F30 lodged in pre-arrival. And that is the most common express case. And then F32 for preloading and F31 for pre-arrival, express on air cargo general. And the last one, F32 preloading, F33 by express operator and pre-arrival, and air carrier would lodge a typical air cargo filing of the master level F21. And this is again the combination for the air cargo, express cargo on air cargo general. Moving on to air cargo general, this is the largest group of the new ENS filings that are being added. First of all, we have the filings that are lodged by what we call the house level filers. So this can be freight forwarders or any other party that is involved in the process, in which might be the carrier but might be not. It can be anybody who is has the information, which is basically corresponding to the house level, so either house airway bill level information or something similar, so that those parties are able to provide the required data. And here we have F24 filings, so lodged in the preloading phase for preloading risk analysis. And this filing contains the PLASI or 7+1 data required for the preloading risk analysis. Then we have F23 and F25. These filings always come together because F23 contains the 7 data elements and F25 contains the +1. So these two together combine create a 7+1 PLASI data set to be used for the preloading risk analysis. Then we have the filing F22, which is house level filing for the pre-arrival phase. And we have F26, which is a house level filing, which is lodged in the preloading phase, but it's used both for preloading and pre-arrival risk analysis. So again, it serves the dual purpose in the air cargo general summary. Let's move to the next one. Here we have the master level ENS filings. So F20, this is the full ENS filing lodged by carrier in the preloading phase, and it's used for both preloading and pre-arrival. F21, lodged by the carrier in the pre-arrival. This is a partial data set, and it's linked with the house level filings lodged by the house level filers. And this is always used in the pre-arrival phase. F27, it's very similar to F20. It's a full data set. The only difference is that it is lodged in the pre-arrival phase and it's only used for the pre-arrival risk analysis. And then we have F28 and F29. So two filings, which are specifically designed for direct airway build scenarios. And F28 is lodged in the preloading and it's used for preloading and pre-arrival. And F29 is lodged in the pre-arrival phase and only used for the pre-arrival risk analysis. And we have here again the possible combinations. Since for air cargo general and air cargo in general, all cargo moved by air, the preloading phase is always mandatory. So we will always have in the preloading the F24, for example, has to be lodged, and then it has to be for the pre-arrival to be complemented either by the combination of F22 and F21, or combination with F27, or combination with F29. Another possible combination, let's move to the next slide, is to use F23 plus F25 for the preloading phase. And again, combine this with F22, F21, or combine with F27 or with F29. And in case the carrier is provided with all the necessary details, all the necessary data elements for a complete ENS data set. Let's move to the next slide. These are the possible filings to be used. So F26, so house level information, which is used for preloading and pre-arrival, plus the F21 master level information, or a complete F20 and or F28 filings, which are lodged in the preloading and used for both preloading and pre-arrival. But this, as I mentioned, requires the carrier to have all the necessary data elements at hand. I see there is a request for floor from Plekat. Please, Andreas.
Yes, thank you, Renata. Hello. Just a brief question, because I believe it was agreed that also the master airway information could be lodged by the freight forwarder as well.
Yes, then, okay, here we say air carrier because the air carrier has the legal obligation in first place to lodge the ENS. But if you have an agreement between the carrier and the freight forwarder that the freight forwarder would lodge all the information on behalf of the air carrier, then yes, using one of the master level filings or the full ENS filings, yes, that can be done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then here we have, as I mentioned, we had to receive questions from European Express Association. So first question is, in case express shipments are conveyed by a general air carrier, what is the link in between the preloading and pre-arrival ENS? So the way the ICS2 is designed, the preloading and pre-arrival ENSs are not linked, they are associated. And this is the preloading and pre-arrival, so preloading plus and pre-arrival ENS, they are separate entities and they are risk assessed as individual entities. However, the PLASI information and the risk analysis results of that on that PLASI are associated to an ENS, and there can be many associations to one ENS, different house consignments, separately risk assessed in the preloading phase, in order to give the customers the full information about the ENS and all the previous steps that happened before the ENS was launched and before the goods have before the goods arrive into the EU. So there is association done, but this is not linked. PLASI as such is not part of an ENS. And then when we speak about the linking, the way it is implemented in ICS2, it concerns the partial ENS filings that are linked into the pre-arrival ENS. And there we have F21 with F26, with F22, F33, and then the last one is the postal case where F42 is linked with F43 and F44. So these are the possibilities or the cases when the partial ENS filings are linked into an ENS. And let's move to the next slide. A bit on the how the linking is done. So the linking is always done from starting from the master level filing. So as soon as the carrier filing is filed, the linking starts, and it's done based on the unique linking key, which is composed from the master transport document number, so master area bill in our case, carrier origin number, and the supplementary declarant origin. This is the party at the house level who will file the house level information. And these elements are found in the underlying house level filings. And if there is even one level below that, so different co-loading or whatever arrangements, this linking, the principle of the unique linking key based on the composition of 3 elements is used there to link all the house level filings with the master to create one ENS. And when that linking is done, then ENS is instantiated, and then the risk analysis is triggered. Let's move to the next question. So still the same scenario, express shipments conveyed by the general air carrier. Would it be possible to provide legal interpretation of the responsibilities for express operator and air carrier in case of multiple dual filings? So I did not put the legal articles, always a disclaimer here. Please always read or consult the legislation. That is the only source of truth for whatever legal basis for the entry formalities. Here I just tried to capture in layman's language the requirements. So first of all, where a person does not provide ENS particulars to the carrier, that person is required to lodge the ENS particulars himself. In that case, the carrier is only responsible to lodge the master level information and to indicate the name of the person and the order number of the person who has to submit his ENS submission at the house level. And each person is then responsible for the particulars that that person has submitted. So carrier is responsible for their part of the filing, and the house level filer, or if in this case of this scenario, express, then operator is responsible for the particulars that he has submitted. And if a party fails to submit any ENS, then of course that party is will be customs will be getting in contact for the missing information. Next. So here, next question is, in the scenario where express operator acting as an air carrier is transporting general air cargo, what will be the process to be followed? Which ENS filing should be lodged? So here, then air cargo general ENS filing should be used, and the process is exactly the same as for air cargo general. And a more technical question, can we use the same digital certificates, or we need to undertake another registration process in UMDS? No, same certificates to be used because UMDS registration is to be done once. This is good news of using the STI to lodge the ENS filings, which may be addressed to any of the EU member state or Switzerland, Norway, or the Northern Ireland. So that was the part on the data requirements. And as I said, if there is a need, we can go in the upcoming webinars. We can go in more details if you have more specific questions. Because the structure of the data is quite complex. There are different many levels in the composed DNS, and all that information may come from the partial filings, which then are linked by the common repository into one ENS. Now, talking about the processes or the steps of the process of the entry. So as soon as the ENS filing was submitted by the declarant, that filing is registered and it gets its own MRN. So those that are familiar with ICS1, where there is one ENS, one MRN, here the concept is different. Each partial or full filing gets its own MRN. The master level ENS filing MRN serves as a unique reference for a composed ENS. And all the other MRNs of the house level filings are embedded, but they are not the unique reference. And so each declarant gets its own MRN for its own filing, except for the carrier, who can always receive the MRN of any ENS filing in which he is indicated as the carrier. So this is a possibility foreseen in the legal text, also implemented in the tool. The carriers need to subscribe for this notification, but the possibility is there. Let's move to the next slide. So very briefly, I will not go into many details on the process of the registration. So once the declarant lodges the ENS filing via the STI, there are two steps of validation. One is done by the shared reader interface, and another is done by the common repository. Different rules or different requirements are checked in each of the validation step. And then if one of the validations fail, the declarant receives the error message. And if only both validations are successful, the ENS filing is then registered and the MRN is returned. And let's go to the next. Then after the ENS is registered, the common repository starts preparing the data for the risk analysis. And in the preloading phase, the ENS filings are risk assessed immediately because the 7+1 data comes basically in one piece. Or if the full ENS filing is used, it is extracted from that ENS filing and it is immediately sent for the risk assessment. In case of the multiple ENS filings in the pre-arrival phase, basically the risk analysis is triggered once all the partial filings are linked and a complete ENS is created. And in case some parts of ENS are missing, they are not lodged, there is a timer actually for the linking. And if that timer expires and still one of the parties has not lodged, in the ENS filing, the risk analysis is triggered without that missing part, and the person that missed to file the ENS is informed about the obligation that he or she failed to comply with, and they are invited to do so immediately. Next slide, please. So after the risk analysis is done, in the preloading phase, the results can be either an assessment complete notification is issued or a do not load request. And that information is sent to the person filing, so the declarant, and the carrier if the carrier is known and connected. And then in the pre-arrival risk analysis phase, the declarant will receive assessment complete only. There is no do not load anymore. Next slide, please. So The notifications of the assessment complete or do not load. The assessment complete notification is always issued by the common repository via STI, but it's not necessary for the economic operators to receive it. It's an optional message. It is always sent to the declarant or person that filed the ENS, the partial ENS, and then if there is a carrier indicated in that ENS, for example, F24 or F23, if the carrier is known, it's registered and is using ICS2 and has requested to receive the assessment complete, that person also will receive that notification. If a do not load is issued, it's a mandatory message for all. So it is sent to the person filing, and if the carrier is known, that information is also sent to the carrier. Let's move to the next slide. Yeah, I already covered this, so let's skip. Next one, yeah. And then during the risk analysis process, you all know we can issue the referrals. And referrals can be of two types. So one is request for information, which can be either requesting to provide additional information or to provide some clarification on the 7+1 data elements, or requesting to amend the 7+1 data elements. In case the data quality is really not sufficient, the request, the RFI request might be to amend the data. And another request is for the high-risk cargo and mail screening, the RFS. And then once the economic operator, and these requests, they are always issued to the declarant, so that to the person that filed an ENS. The carrier, if he is known, can be informed about the fact that these kind of referrals were issued. And then in case the person is required to amend the ENS, the referral requested reference has to be included in the amendment of the ENS filing so that the referral process can be closed. Next slide. Yes, I think this we can also skip. So, and looking into the preloading, especially scenario, maybe less for the pre-arrival risk analysis, the outcomes here are all the different possible scenarios, what can happen after the risk analysis. So assessment complete can be issued, or it can be in RFI, which then can be followed by assessment complete, or maybe do not load, maybe RFS. RFS directly could be issued, which again can be followed by assessment complete or do not load. RFI could also be issued after RFS, so there is no strict order of the referrals, because the referrals are issued on case-by-case basis, decision by the risk analyst based on all the information available, and yeah, to all related, depending on all the operational details and all the operational situations surrounding that specific consignment. And let's move to the next slide. Then, after the risk assessment is done, in preloading and pre-arrival, the next step in the process is the arrival of means of transport, which has to be reported. And the arrival notification has to be lodged by the person that is operating the aircraft upon the arrival at the actual customs of first entry. It can be done via the shared trader interface of ICS2 or via national arrival system, if such exists, and is able to receive the arrival notification for the entry or purpose. Here the economic operator can choose what they want to use, what is available and what they want to use. The arrival notification as such is needed to retrieve all the ENSs for all the cargo on board of the aircraft. So this is the only purpose of it. And the arrival notification must contain one of the following. So either the list of master airway bill numbers in combination with the estimated date and time of arrival, conveyance reference number, so the flight number in combination with estimated date and time of arrival, or the list of the MRNs of the INSs. So again, the carrier can choose which data they want to use in their arrival notification. So here, briefly, the overview of the entire process of the arrival of means of transport. The arrival notification will also be validated and registered, so it will get its own MRN. There is an indicator in the MRN structure indicating whether it is an MRN of an ENS or an MRN of arrival notification. If, of course, if there are errors, the error messages are sent back. Then if the arrival notification is successfully registered, then based on the data elements provided in that arrival notifications, all the ENSs are retrieved. And the state of each house consignment is checked, and if it is correct, then the state of the house consignments have arrived is recorded, and then if there is a control decision, that control decision is immediately communicated to the person that notified the arrival, or to a notified party. The person notifying the arrival can indicate another notified party, which then is notified by the common repository and STI, for example, about the need to present the goods for controls. And this step, this control notification, is only sent when a very high risk is identified and the goods need to be immediately controlled, so immediately upon the arrival. This is not the standard presentation and arrival and control process. So this notification should be expected to be used not very often. And when it is sent, then the goods need to be immediately presented by the carrier or by the notified party or by any other party that is able to present the goods to customs. If the state of the house consignment of house consignments in the ENS is not correct, meaning that they were already presented somewhere else or arrived somewhere else, this is notified to the person notifying the arrival, because apparently there is something wrong, and either the goods should not be presented here, or they were erroneously presented somewhere else, or arrived somewhere else, and then it's basically information only, nothing is expected, or maybe just to check what is the situation, why maybe there's some systemic errors in the trader application, or maybe just this kind of special, I don't know, circumstances. Maybe plane had to land somewhere else in EU and now it's arriving the second time, although then the secondary arrival notification is not required. But there is something irregular, and that should be checked by the economic operator. Let's move to the next. Then the presentation. So the regular presentation should happen for goods once they are unloaded from the means of transport, or once they are transshipped. Freight remaining on board, or the goods that are temporarily unloaded and reloaded to the same means of transport in order to enable the loading of other goods, do not need to be presented, except in that case where the very high risk is identified and then customs force presentation of the goods for immediate controls at the customs office, first entry. Presentation notification is to be submitted via the national presentation system. So this is not to be done via the shared trader interface of ICS2. There is some presentation information which is submitted from the national presentation system to the ICS2. Again, to change the state of the house consignments into the presented ones, and then to trigger the necessary controls. Presentation. So ICS2 Common Repository accepts the presentation done at the level of MRN of an ENS, master survey bill, house survey bill, receptacle for the postal items for carrier presentation only. House consignment, this is equivalent to the house area bill, but this is a terminology we use for the postal operators for their presentation. Container, if it is used. Container maybe will be more relevant for maritime, but nevertheless possible also for the air. However, of course, everything depends on the national presentation system and the implementation of different functionalities in that system. So ICS2 Common Repository is quite flexible in whatever information is used. Of course, everything will depend on the national presentation system. So then we have some questions. Okay, here again, express shipments conveyed by air, general air carrier. Okay, so this was the request to provide for the clarification on the procedure of the and process of submitting arrival notification and presentation notification. I hope this is done in the presentation that you have just seen. If not, you may ask further questions. Let's move to the next slide. There is quite a kind of a request. Would it be possible to provide a single file reference to all ICS2 release to applicable IT specification and operational documents guidance? All the documentation which is needed for the development of the applications on the economic operator side, they are published in a public Circa BC group. They are also published on PIX, but PIX is only accessible to the associations, which would then need to distribute this information. And PIX contains not only the final approved versions of the documentation, but also a lot of documents which are in the drafting state, discussion in the project groups, and so on. So my advice would be to use the public Circa BC group. We will add the link into the slide before we publish them, where in the library only the approved versions of all the necessary documents are published, accessible to everyone. No registration is needed. And we will not create a file with all the reference documents because this is the documents are changing. There are updates of them happening, and for us it will be well, quite an extra activity to maintain such a list, and then so therefore we suggest just to follow the Circa group and to get the documents out from there. Comparison table between release 1 and release 2 requirements for F32. Again, here this should not really be a problem for persons who work with the specifications to see the differences, because they are very tiny. We have just small changes in the rules and conditions and data field format. A couple of elements become mandatory in release 2 instead of being optional. Although no, for F32 it's not even that. So the changes are really small, and we invite you to go through the specifications, and if you have any questions, to come back to us. And the last question is, which existing ICS2 guidance will have to be adapted, redrafted in order to cover the new release 2 processes? So all of it. We have at the moment only the guidance for express and postal operators, but new guidance has to be drafted for air cargo general, and then the existing guidance of release 1 for postal and express operators needs to be adapted for release 2, because there are much more things that are being introduced in release 2. And yeah, we will start the process this year. The experience of release 1 showed that it's quite requiring quite some time and quite some resources. So we will start this year, but then most probably most of the work will happen in the course of 2022. So to have it ready then before going live in 23. Okay, a request for Commission to reconfirm that the preloading cluster risk analysis even after March 2023 will be focused on the bomb in the box. risk and not other customs risks. Yes, preloading risk analysis will only focus on aviation security. Nothing changes there, but the pre-arrival risk will focus on every type of risk. As express carriers operating in all EU member states, do we need to execute end-to-end testing with each member state, especially on the pre-arrival messages? So no. End-to-end is an optional testing campaign. What you have to do is the mode 1 and mode 2 conformance campaigns, but that is done once because you are always interacting only with the shared reader interface, single connection. And one end-to-end campaign, if the economic operator decides to do that, is sufficient. So we can, I think the EHL colleagues have experience, we can try to find some volunteering member states, some more than one to participate, and then to have different roles of responsible involved member state to do the testing. And the last question, what does it mean for conformance testing, the self-service self-conformance? It means that the economic operators will have to execute the conformance testing themselves with the help of our new tool, shared reader interface special trader portal, specific trader portal. It will have the functionality to to start the execution of the conformance testing. So different test cases will be built for different type of the economic operators, different type of filings, and so on. And there will be no support as it was in release 1, because in release 1 we had very few economic operators, and we were able to provide support to each and every one of them. In release 2, unfortunately, due to the large number of new actors coming in, this will not be possible anymore. There is a request from Rosen for a floor. Rosen, please go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Renata. In fact, it's not a question, it's more for a clarification about the end-to-end testing. Why we send this question is because more and more we are receiving requests from different member states whether we are willing to perform end-to-end tests with them. So that I was wondering, do we need to perform separate end-to-end tests with each and every member state, or it's again like we had in the past only with STI?
No, it's as I said, one campaign. I think it's more than enough. We can try in that campaign, of course, if we invite several member states, we can try, to play that scenarios where you address your findings to different member states, not like Germany, like we have now in release 1, where all preloading filings go to Germany. That will continue for preloading, but for pre-arrival, you will be addressing your ENSs to different member states. So we can think about scenarios like that. And then, of course, if member states would like to participate, because I think it's also very useful for them, we can do it like that. But then one campaign, I really do not want to torture you guys having different campaigns with different member states, because we went through the pains in release 1, and yeah.
Indeed. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks.
You're welcome, Rosen. There is also a request to share the presentations afterwards. Yes, we will share, as I said, we will share them on the Pix platform, and then if you do not have access, your association to which you belong, they will share the information with you and share the slides with you. Eddie would like to ask the question. Please, Eddie, you have the floor.
Hi, Renata. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, a question on RFIs and RFS. On your slide, I saw that you also mentioned RFI and RFS next to the pre-arrival entry summary declarations. Now, we thought that it was only linked to the preload entry summary declarations.
It's only for, look, RFI, the request for information, it's also for pre-arrival. RFS is only for preloading.
Okay, that's clear.
Yes, the RFI can happen in both phases. RFS is strictly preloading only.
All right, that's what we thought. All right. Okay, thanks for the confirmation.
You're welcome. Any other requests for the floor?
Yes, excuse me, Ben Radstak, Aircar Netherlands. My question is about the pre-loading information and risk analysis. Has it been discussed to expand those to also dangerous goods risks, in particular undeclared dangerous goods such as lithium batteries? We've seen several incidents over the recent years, and I could imagine that the preloading information is also going to be used to eliminate the risk associated to dangerous goods. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. At the moment, no, this is not a type of the risks to be assessed in the preloading phase. We are really only focusing on the what we call the bomb in a box. So explosive devices that might be planted on the aircrafts, and it take the aircrafts down. So yes,
not yet the fire in the box.
No. No.
Okay, there's some lobbying to do for us. Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Renata, I have another question about the organization of those webinars. Do you think beneficial to organize those webinars separately per operators and different types of services, so it's not to be everyone in this webinar, Postal Express, air general carriers?
I am flexible. If you would request to have a specific webinar dedicated, for example, for express industry only with your specific questions, yes, please. We just arrange the date and we prepare the content and we can open it.
Okay.
So, however, I will just mention that today we have our member state colleagues present because
of course, yes, absolutely.
Useful for them to to listen and maybe to see also what kind of questions are there on the trade side, so that they can also know how to support their traders, because member states will have to they will have a very important role in supporting their economic operators that will be registered in their countries to prepare for ICS2.
Yeah. Fully agree with you. Thank you.
So yes, Ismail, yes, we will publish the presentation also for the member states on PIX. Okay, so while we are waiting for any further questions, I will just remind that again, the next webinar is planned for July 20th. If you have any specific questions, topics that you would like us to explain in more detail, please let us know in advance so that we can prepare, and then we will invite you all. Or if a specific industry has would like to have a session dedicated to their business sector only, also please let us know. We will organize that for you.
Dobre. Idete bez babičky teda? A kam idete, do toho Trenčína? A kedy asi odhaduje, že...
So do we have any other requests for the floor? That does not seem to be the case. Okay, perfect. Then we will end today's session. As I mentioned, everything will be published on the respective PIX group for member states and for the economic operators. Thank you very much for your questions, for your participation, and I hope to see or hear you on our next webinar in July. Thank you and have a nice day. Goodbye.